Hey, today I've got another movement of the day post for you. Today's model I'm going to call the seated hip trio. Seated because we can't do this in our chair in the office setting is perfect. If you want to break and you actually don't even want to get up, this one's for you. It's for everyone. All right, and then it's all about the hip flexor and the hip mobility. And the trio is because we're going to string together 3 moves into a combo. It's going to be a mobility, a strengthener, and a flexibility drill. And that order is intentional because that's just the way we need to train. We should hit mobility always before strength, and then the flexibility is just as we go along as needed. So the first part is simply to make sure that we are set up correctly. And the setup is very important. We want to be set up in a nice 90-90 straight posture. So in order to get to, so I probably should not have the heels. We want feet flat. But that posture, in order to prevent us from being too stiff or holding our breath, while we're trying to keep upright, once you're in this upright posture, I want you to set yourself. First thing we're going to do is roll our shoulders back and down, just ever so slightly. Once you're there, don't think about it. Then we're going to encourage this proper ab engagement by doing a little cough. And you should feel exactly how that made your abs and your core engage and tighten. That's what we're going to keep throughout. And in order to not be stiff or stop breathing, think about nice even breath through the nose, out through your mouth. You can also do in and out through your nose on this one. It's not that difficult. So once you're set there, this part does not move. Your posture is set. Now, the mobility drill part. This one is very interesting because we actually get to do a little bit of a hip hinge drill while we're seated, which is kind of rare because normally we say the hip hinge, we talk about the hip hinge from a standing point, and we say you could use a chair as a cue, or think about a chair as a cue, in that you want to pretend you're sitting down in order to get into that hip hinge. So that means you would end up pushing your hips back, 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 back. And as you do so, and as you lower towards the chair, you have this little crease that happens, and there's your hip hinge. Well, once we're seated upright, we lose that hip hinge, but this is how you recreate it. So forget about the floor, forget about the chair existing. You're going to think about just your body in terms of lines and angles through space. So even if this chair wasn't there, if we were to just keep pushing in this position, our hips back, or pretending to push the hips back, and in our upright posture, keep angling forward, we will recreate that hip hinge. So this is where we want to stay. Now your knees are going to be slightly further than hip width apart, and you could keep your fingers here as your tactile cue. Okay, so this is our starting point setup for the mobility drill. Now the drill itself, the purpose of that is we're going to train the hips to kick in when it's supposed to contribute to correct movement. So as we're going about our day and we're reaching and we're bending and we're rotating, we shouldn't let just the lower back do the work or twist through the knees. So we need to train the hips to be able to work through its mobility to help support, it's part of the job. So we're going to really focus on this hip mobility here. So this part is set. We're going to rotate slightly to angle out to each knee in this movement. Now, we're not going to rotate by just rotating our head or our shoulder or bringing the knees with it as we rotate. Everything is fixed here. We're going to keep this hinge on. Okay, and we're going to rotate through the hips. That's going to naturally just bring the whole torso with it. And we're going to take our upper chest and push it down towards that knee. Now, as soon as you go out of posture and you end up rounding, now you've gone past your in range. But if it's available to you, you can also pretend to reach for something all the way towards the floor. So we'll take a few, it'll take several seconds to complete one rep. You want to keep alternating that until you get 10 reps on each side. Don't bring the knees in. If you find that you have some sensations all around this hip joint, depending on, where you are personally, That's okay. That's your mobility working. Now, moving on to the strengthener. This is the seated hip flexor strengthener, and basically we want to first make sure that we have proper flexion capabilities. So if this is 90-90 here at the hip flexor, we want to make sure we could get to at least 120 on each side. So if you have that available to you, we're going to do a little bit of an isometric. We're going to add a little bonus here. Take the flat of your hands, place it on the top of the knee, the thigh that you're working. Raise that knee up. Your posture from before remains the same, 90-90. Raise it up as you resist. So slow resist. Slow resist down. So don't let it just drop down, okay? Just slowly resist it down. And then you want to alternate on this one as well, because you want to take a note of any differences in strength. So one thing for sure that shouldn't happen, you should not go break this 90-90 and end up rocking back, okay? This is not what you want. Okay, if you feel that the resistance of the palms is too much and you still feel it like so without any resistance, totally fine. Then do it that way. And make sure that you're not doing any twisting, okay, or rocking. All right, so moving on to the flexibility. Now this flexibility drill is also very unique because, well, we'll talk about that in a sec. So this is one where you have a little bit of figuring out to do depending on your chair and setup. So we'll talk about what the point of this stretch, and therefore you can recreate it based on whatever you have. So what I mean is, by chair, for example, mine has wheels, mine has cush, mine has a slope at the end, okay? So yours might be flat and square, which is actually ideal for this, and have, you know, just a normal 4 legs. So it really depends. And since I have wheels, I'm going to place it right up against something, so if I push back, it's not gonna roll. Okay, so the point of this drill is that you want to be able to get as close to the edge of the seat as possible, okay? Which is where I might feel like I'm slipping because of my chair, so I'm okay. You are okay to use your hands for support on this one. And if you have something to brace against in the front, that will be a nice counterbalance. And I will take off my shoes for this one. What we're going to do, if we're going to stretch our right hip flexor, our right foot will come around that chair and place the top of that foot on the ground behind you, under the chair or around the chair, however it needs to get there based on your chair. So if my seat was the floor, it would look like that, okay? So once you're there, again, the point is you want to be as close to the edge as possible, because you want that knee to drop with as much weight as possible. So you're getting this passive, decompressive stretch to the hip flexor, which, as far as stretches of the hip flexors go, this one is very mild, but it has this decompression feature, which is unique. So let that hang there and let that knee stretch. So you want this leg as relaxed as possible. Support yourself otherwise, okay, in order to let that happen. It's a stretch, so we're going to hold it for about 10 to 15 seconds. If you do 15 seconds, just 3 times alternating on each side is perfect. So there are your 3 combo for the trio. It all feels great. To give it a try. This is Jen signing off, reminding you to start where you are, do what you can, use what you have, and move something.